Have you ever just stopped and looked at a giant, ancient tree and thought, how? I mean, where did all that come from? It's like nature's greatest magic trick. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain and see exactly how plants manage this incredible feat of creating life, basically, out of thin air.
Okay, so let's really think about this. You start with this tiny little seed, right? Maybe smaller than your fingernail. You pop it in the ground, give it some water, some sun, and boom, it turns into this massive thing. We're talking tons of wood, bark, and leaves. So the big question is, where does all that stuff, all that physical mass actually come from? To figure this out, we've got to put on our detective hats. I mean, it seems impossible, doesn't it? For something to get that huge without, eating something. So let's start by investigating the most obvious suspect.
So what's the first thing you'd guess? The soil, right? It just makes sense. The roots are down there in the dirt, so the tree must be eating the dirt. But, and this is a big but, experiments have totally proven this wrong. Yeah, plants pull up minerals and water from the soil, for sure. But the huge majority of their actual mass, the wood, the leaves, all of it, that comes from somewhere else completely. Okay, to really crack this case, we have to rewind a bit and go back to basics. We need to get a handle on what anything is actually made of. Doesn't matter if it's a rock, or you, or a giant redwood tree. We've got to talk about the fundamental building blocks of, well, everything.
And that brings us to a really key idea. Matter. It's just the physical stuff that everything is made of. It's that simple. So for our little seed to grow into a huge tree, it has to get more matter from somewhere. And it turns out all matter is built from the same tiny pieces.
And those tiny pieces, they're called atoms. You can think of them as the universe's ultimate Lego bricks. Things like carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen. They're the absolute smallest units that build, well, everything around us.
But here's the thing. Atoms almost never fly solo. They love to link up with each other using these things called chemical bonds. And when they do, they form molecules. And molecules, well, they're the real structures that make up everything, from a single drop of water to the super complex wood inside a tree.
So take a look here. A simple water molecule, that's just one oxygen atom stuck to two hydrogen atoms. Carbon dioxide, one carbon, two oxygens. Super simple. So for our seed to turn into a tree, it needs to grab a huge number of these atoms so it can build all the new, complex molecules it needs. Which brings us right back to our big question. Where is it getting them from? Well, the answer, it turns out, is hiding inside the plant's leaves. There's this incredible chemical process going on in there. A kind of secret recipe, really. It just takes a few simple ingredients, and it's all powered by the sun. And I'm pretty sure you've heard of it before. The recipe is called photosynthesis. It's this amazing series of chemical reactions that plants use to literally make their own food. And by doing that, they're also building their own bodies. And you know what's wild? The ingredients for this recipe are super simple. The plant gets water, usually up through its roots. It breathes in carbon dioxide from the air through these tiny little holes in its leaves, and then it uses the energy from sunlight to kickstart the whole reaction. Okay, but how do we know for sure the plant is actually using this stuff? Well, scientists have a really clever way to prove it. There's a classic experiment that uses this aquatic plant called Elodea. What they do is they put it in water with a special indicator dye, and this lets us physically see the plant sucking up one of those key ingredients, carbon dioxide. And here's the proof, plain as day. The dye in the water starts out yellow, which tells us there's carbon dioxide in there. Now, when you shine a light on the plant, the water turns blue. Poof! The CO2 is gone. The plant slurped it all up. But what happens in the dark? The water stays yellow. Absolutely nothing happens. And that is the aha moment. The sunlight is the key. It's what lets the plant pull carbon dioxide straight out of its environment. Okay, so let's recap. We've got our ingredients, water and carbon dioxide. We've got our energy source, the sun. So what in the world is the plant making with this recipe? Well, the answer is basically the foundation for almost all life on our planet. So what it does is it uses that energy from the sun to literally rip apart the atoms from the carbon dioxide and water molecules, and then it rearranges them into something completely new. It creates glucose, a simple sugar. This is the stuff. This is the matter the plant uses to build itself. And this sugar, it's incredible stuff. It's not just building material. See, those chemical bonds that hold the sugar molecule together, they are literally packed with the energy the plant just captured from the sun. So the sugar is both the bricks and the battery pack for the plant. How cool is that?
So, let's circle all the way back to our first question. Where does the mass of a giant tree actually come from? The answer is, it comes from the air. I mean, think about that. The tree is literally pulling carbon atoms out of the invisible carbon dioxide gas that's all around us, and it's using the sun's energy to lock those atoms together and build its body. A tree is basically made of air. Solidified air.
But wait, there's another part to the story. How does the plant, or say an animal that eats the plant, get that energy back out of the sugar? Well, there's a second process, and it's basically the mirror image of photosynthesis. It's the key to unlocking all that stored fuel.
It's a process called cellular respiration. And this is something all living cells do. Yours, mine, a plant. It's how we break down food molecules. By combining that sugar with oxygen, the cell can snap those chemical bonds and release all that stored energy, which it then uses to, well, to live.
And this is not some weird abstract science thing. You feel this every single day. Think about it. When you exercise, your muscles are screaming for more energy, right? To get that energy, your cells have to do cellular respiration way faster. And that needs more oxygen. And that's exactly why you start breathing harder. Your body is desperately trying to get more oxygen to your cells so they can unlock more energy from your food.
So when you put these two processes right next to each other, you see this just beautiful symmetry. Check it out. Photosynthesis takes in carbon dioxide and water, and it makes sugar and oxygen. Cellular respiration takes in that sugar and oxygen, and its waste products are carbon dioxide and water. See? The waste of one is the food for the other. It's a perfect self-sustaining loop. It's the engine that drives the entire planet's carbon cycle.
And really, this cycle is everything. It's the foundation of life as we know it. Plants are the ultimate givers. Through photosynthesis, they capture the sun's energy and they create the food and, just as important, the oxygen that almost every other living thing on this planet, yep, including us, absolutely needs to survive.
Which brings us to one last, really important thought. If a massive tree is basically a giant storehouse for carbon that it pulled out of the air, what happens when we clear a forest? All that carbon that was locked away sometimes for centuries, where does it all go?